This is Constant Elevation, the show for rising Air Force and community leaders who seek to define the future. Learn powerful work and life tactics to tackle any challenge. I'm your host, Gabriel Gabrock Avila. Let's go.
What's up, everybody? Gabrock back on the mic once again. Up front, this podcast is going to be a little bit different because I'm trying out some new equipment. So I bought a wireless mic a while ago, and I figured out, why don't I try and do that? Because as I started to do this podcast, I did the traditional getting the wired mic, and I have all the audio inputs and all that jazz, and I still like that system. But for this specific episode, if the quality sounds different, it's because it is, and I'm trying something different with a wireless setup. So get over it, it's fine. So lots of exciting stuff going on this week. I think there's actually just not 10 minutes ago, I got really excited because I finally got officially notified that I'll be competing for the rank of 06 and Colonel this year. So this is my in the zone moment, and so I've been waiting for this since I got into the Air Force. I've always had a lifelong goal, or career-long goal, I should say, to make the rank of Colonel. And so I actually, interestingly for me, 2 years ago, I was able to compete. That was my 2-year below the zone. Air Force policy got released and updated, eliminating below the zone. So last year I was not able to compete. And then finally this year I'm on time, and I will be competing for the board meets in July. And so I got to get all my paperwork situated, talk with leadership, making sure I'm putting myself in the best position. Arguably, I think that position is already there. I just have to let the records and my performance speak for itself. And so I'm excited to get onto that, and looking forward to if I get that opportunity to make the rank of Colonel. And I think if I make it, I'll be notified this year. That's ridiculous and crazy, but that'll be so cool. I'll be able to meet my career-long goal of at least achieving the rank of Colonel. I don't know exactly what I'm going to pin on, but we'll see how it goes. So that was really cool, really excited and hype about that. I mentioned last episode that we're now in the season of the CrossFit Games Open. And so last week I successfully did 21.1. And so I got a score of 377 in the RX division. We'll see exactly what gets released tonight for 21.2. Again, I record all my episodes on Thursdays and I release them on Sunday. And so doesn't matter, I'm gonna have the same thing where I'm gonna panic and get all stressed out about it tonight. I have to coach to the first class tomorrow morning at 6, and then I immediately do the workout right after that at 7 o'clock. So looking forward to throwing down 21.2. Also, just recently, yesterday, I just had my first coach's evaluation. So the coaching staff, Kyle specifically at the Revival Fitness, gave me my evaluation yesterday, and I scored a 93 out of 100. So pretty good. He came to one class, and I realized it was only one class. And so to a coach's evaluation, I'll say for that class, I got a score of 93 over 100. Very busy class. I was happy that the points of improvement that he gave for me, I know I could have, I can do. And so those things I'll integrate and make sure that I'm not a coach that's above any kind of feedback. So I want to make sure I'm representing both myself and his company and his brand to make sure that we're giving that professional quality level of coaching that we are known for at Revival Fitness. So shout out to Kyle for giving me that honest feedback and making me a better coach. Let's see what else. I think then, so the big things I want to talk about this week. So actually, starting with last week, I listened to, if you're not listening to the Leadership as a Domain podcast, I highly recommend you should. It's hosted by retired Colonel John Big Dog Roan. And so I was actually, him and I, we started our podcasts a little bit around the same time. I remember we were in the Minority Air Force Officer Forum, and I was like, so somehow the conversation started and we started linking up early, realized we're very much on the same wavelength when it comes to leadership. And so I was fortunate to be, I was a guest on his podcast and he was a guest on my podcast early. And so I'll put links in the description below, but it was really cool. And so I've been following, he's been able to, his access to some of the Air Force top leaders is awesome. And so last week or maybe 2 weeks, he dropped his episode where he got to interview General Brown, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So they're former work colleagues, and it was really cool to listen to. I took our dog Sally for a walk, and for that hour, all I did was listen to that podcast, and it was amazing. So highly recommend you check out Leadership as a Domain podcast, specifically the one with General Brown. I'll put that link in the description below. And so if you notice that now I'm talking like a YouTuber, I'm not a YouTuber by any means. I'm a podcaster, but that's what the kids say these days, and I'll make sure I put the links in there. So the idea though is, it was a great episode, so I'm not gonna cover the entire thing, but one of the things Big Dog asked was like, how does General Brown, how does he try and get people to give him honest feedback, right? It's very intimidating. I would say I'd be intimidated. if I was talking to the general, chief of staff of the Air Force, and he asked me a question, what can we do? General Brown likes to say, I'm up for taskers. I can't help fix something if I don't know it needs to be fixed. So he wants to take on tasks. So how does he approach people who may be intimidated by asking that kind of question or asking for some feedback or input? And he says that he likes to ask people, I wrote it down, and so this is gonna be kind of lead into this week's episode. He said, I don't ask people for their opinions, I ask for their advice. I don't ask people for their opinions, I ask for their advice. And just that small nuance of information, I think it draws them into, like, I want you to be part of the solution. I don't want you to be Monday morning quarterback or along a wallflower and just kind of giving your feedback and then going back to your day. I want your advice. What can you do? How can you be part of the problem, part of the solution, and not just admiring the solution? So I really, really like that approach. Enough to I wrote it down, immediately texted Big Dog and said, it was an awesome episode. So, based on the title of this, don't let the new normal be the pathetic past. Here's my advice to leaders at multiple levels, and depending on where you're at in your organization, I hope you can take this advice for what it's worth, about how to not let the new normal become the pathetic past, okay? And I think it's very important that we understand that, like, new normal is definitely a word that people get irritated of hearing, including me, but it's something that you have heard, but arguably, so what I'm thinking about is, we've been at new normal 1.0 since the beginning of the pandemic, right? And so since basically society had to shut down for the safety of not spreading the disease, and then also we were forced, we were forced into the opportunity, I'll call it that, in the transition, to say, how are we gonna adjust to this? And that's where you saw the rise of max telework and all the the capabilities that have been rolled out, not only for the DoD, but for the world at large. Now everybody knows what Zoom is, now everybody knows how to do online stuff, not everybody, but you know what I'm saying. It's much more common, more so than it was prior to. So the idea that we're already in some sort of new normal. I'm thinking about new normal 2.0, and I think because we're not rounding the curve by any means, but as far as like rounding the bases, maybe first base, as far as having the vaccines and rolling out, you start to see portions of our community start opening up, depending on the states and everything like that. One of the places, a milestone I would think about is making sure, or how would I think about new normal 2.0? And I would say that would be around August, towards the end of summer / the start of the new academic year for schools. I say that because that's such a huge, I believe that's such a huge foundational thing we as a community and society need to understand how we're going forward. And because we've noticed that like our personal and professional lives have been so integrated with each other that you can't ignore them. You can't understand that, like, how am I gonna have a full-on professional workforce when I know they have kids and they're at home, or they're doing a hybrid type of learning, or maybe they're not comfortable going back to work, or sending their kids to school. How do we as leaders take in all the information and make sure we're doing our job and what is to lead, okay? And so that idea, as far as how do we picking a target towards the end of summer and the beginning of the next school year as new normal 2.0. So here at JVHU Doden, I've heard that we're gonna try and figure out ways to start doing reconstitution plans, looking at starting some of that phasing. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be called phasing, right after Easter. Cool, we'll just say, whether or not that's true or not, it doesn't matter. The idea is we're gonna be taking deliberate steps to try and reconstitute our workforce. So I asked some questions, and I was already giving, whether people want to hear it or not, I'm giving my advice is like, what do we mean when we say that? Because surely we're not going back to we're not trying to get back to where we were, because we're not that anymore, right? It's like Pandora's already been opened, the box has been opened. There's other things and some good things that have happened, right? And so like I tend to be an optimist, and I want to say some good things have emerged, and we want to make sure that we don't lose out on that capital. So a couple things that I feel that like we have to make sure that there's going to be a balance of as many factors as possible, right? And so you're not going to be able to get everything. You're not going to be able to understand that like, hey, so we can assume that everybody has a vaccine, because that's not going to be true. Either because they don't have access to it yet, they're at the back of the line, or potentially they just don't feel comfortable getting the vaccine. So how do we incorporate all those things? They don't have any vaccines yet for children, at least approved. So how do we make sure some of those things, as news comes about, we leave enough runway in front of us to kind of adjust any decisions that we make? And arguably, we should be making decisions now, and that's okay. But you want to make sure you're trying to make it with as much. You're gonna no leader is ever going to have 100% of the information available to make a decision. It's not. It's impossible. You can't do that. That's the whole point of being a leader. You're responsible for making decisions on not inclusive data. And so how do you approach these things? For the people side of this equation, I really think that like you have to treat it like case by case. While we can have some broad policies that we like to have as many people as possible returning to work, sure, and that makes sense as a broad policy, yet the nuances and the exceptions, I think, are what needs to be, that's where the rubber meets the road and most of the decision space needs to be taken. And so and I think that's okay, assuming you have those multiple layers in between everything to help make some of those, what I'll call them, empowered decisions, right? And so that's not General Brown published in one of his last action papers that like empowered airmen, that was the name of the title. And so like he's challenging us to make sure that we empower at the lowest levels for people to make decisions. I believe that like when it comes to people, that you should be able to, at the lowest level at the team leads, they're gonna be understanding exactly the nuances and the factors that go along with the people they're directly responsible for. That's what you should do. Work center supervisors, flight commanders, that kind of jazz. They should know where their people at and what are some of the concerns going on. They also have an inherent understanding of their business, their job. So certain jobs are going to be requiring actually physical people to be around, right? And there could be many reasons for that. There could be because of access to equipment, right? Maybe you can't do certain kind of jobs unless you're physically if you're a CE guy, you have to be in the garages. You need to have access to your equipment to actually do your job. Same thing with everybody in the flight line. There's no teleworking on the flight line. You work on the damn flight line. That's what you're doing. And so some of those things as the higher as you go, clearly you're gonna have some experience of that, but you don't know the nuances of exactly that execution. That should be taken by the people at the appropriate level. So empowering airmen to kind of be part of that conversation and not just be in receive mode, it should be a two-way conversation to be like, how do we go about this and doing that balance of ensuring our people are taken care of, and the mission is the stupid line of, mission first, people always. Like, sure, I really, really don't like that phrase because it's too cliche, but it does make sense in this scenario, to the point where like I threw up in my mouth a little bit by just saying it out loud. But yeah, you're never gonna have all the decisions, but all the information, I should say. But as a leader, you need to empower your people to help come up with some of the solutions, get their buy-in, ask for their advice, and say, how would you accomplish your mission in New Normal 2.0 based on your team's responsibilities and your team makeup? I think that's fair. I think the other piece then is you're erring on the side of humanity, right? I mean, like we have to be, hopefully, if anything that has drawn out of the pandemic is we're a little bit more, I don't want to say oversensitive because I don't want to be oversensitive, but you should be a little bit more cognizant of your fellow teammates and their situations they're going with their family, and just erring on the side of caring, right? Just making sure that you're looking out for them, they're a fellow wingman, and want to make sure that we're taking care of them as much as possible. They understand that like when you raise your hand for the serving the uniform, there are certain sacrifices you have to make, and so that's okay because you understand you're doing something for the bigger picture. And those decisions, asking people to do difficult things, are much better going down when they know that it's coming from a place of caring, when it's a place of this is what is required of service of you. Most people will get those kind of things. So just take them case by case to make sure that those things are accounted for. You're also not gonna be able to accommodate everything. Just because somebody has a family situation that pulls them out of the game, that isn't a blatant rule that gets applied to everybody, right? I've heard, there's differences of people, if you have kids, automatically all these things need to be accounted for. But like, there's different levels of kids. Like I have high school level kids versus grade school. So I have the flexibility to do a little bit more things, and freedom maneuver, I should say, as opposed to other parents who have to, basically make sure they're there for their grade school kids if they're still doing hybrid or telework distance learning. So just have some cognizance, have some common sense to go out there and just like understand your people and rely on them to help make some decisions to kind of balance out what needs to happen, I should say. The other piece I think that's going to be part of New Normal 2.0 is going to be presence. And I think this is an underlying thing where people are like, including me, I'm like, hey, so, because when they started talking about reconstitution, trying to bring everybody back, and I'm like everybody back? Why? Why are we bringing everybody back? And part of that is reason why is because we have a couple things. One, we just rolled out a large amount of telework capabilities. So if we move everybody back, we're essentially just are we not gonna use those telework capabilities anymore? Like, we spend a lot of money on it, and we should not let that muscle atrophy. So we should make sure we're kind of using those accordingly. Obviously, some of these technologies are going to be able to be used both in the workplace and at home. And so depending on your job, make sure you take advantage of that, right? Don't just kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. We made some good strides, so let's retain those good strides. Again, don't go back to the pathetic past. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I advise to avoid, I should say. Other pieces that, especially where I work, real estate, as far as the buildings and the security functions that go along with that buildings. I work in a SCIF, and so SCIF real estate and workspace is pretty expensive. And so if we're gonna have, they're already talking about racking and stacking, like who really needs to be in here because we only have so many spots to do, top secret level information, then that should be prioritized, but it should be realistically prioritized. You can't just say, well, I envision my team to be 40, so I need 40 spots. But your team right now is the size of 13. Like, get out of here. You're not getting all 40 spots. So just having that common sense approach as far as what of your jobs that require the physical presence because of, like I already mentioned before, you need the kind of equipment, there is a degree of human interaction, obviously, that you have to do, and the most optimal version of that operation is physically with each other, then obviously you got to go back. But if you're in like a data/information dominant trade like I am, then allow some flexibility to understand that, like, do I need to be in there? Am I still retaining the same level of productivity doing telework? And if the answer is yes, then why are you going to change it? Don't make everybody go to the past, the pathetic past. Let them go to new normal 2.0, and that's where we should be. Other pieces, I think it's still the adopting of everything that's going on in our lives. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I think there is a huge integration now. The line used to be pretty solid. Here's my personal life, here's my professional life. I think the pandemic has forced us that line is really blurry. And that's not a bad thing. Arguably, we should have been thinking like that in the beginning, just a holistic understanding of the people we work with and our mission, and how do we smartly go about doing that without burning one town to the ground, right? And so the idea of that line being blurred and figuring out what's going to be the end state solution and new normal 2.0, I really think I'm excited for that. I want to be part of those conversations. Again, I'll be providing my advice whether people want to hear it or not, because I feel that, like, I don't mind putting my neck out there and being the hold my beer guy to express thoughts of my fellow teammates if they don't know or not comfortable sharing those thoughts. So I'll do my best to make sure I share those things out here. So again, going back to Big Dog's podcast and an interview with General Brown, like what's the best way to engage with people? Ask for their advice, don't ask for their opinion. Get people to be bought into the solution because they're part of it, right? We're all in this together. Shout out High School Musical. But there is an idea that we're gonna be able to, leaders are going to find the right ways to get through this, and we will get through it because we have to, right? And so just be out there, take care of your people, take care of the mission. It's all secular. We're going to be okay. But yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for so many things coming along in the spring and the summertime. I like to take advantage of chaotic times, and we have some bright stuff ahead of us, me included, and hopefully for you all too. So again, hopefully the audio on this episode comes off okay, because I'm only doing one take Jake. I'm not going to re-record this episode. So I'll do the post-production. I'll figure out if I want to stick with this kind of, it is kind of nice. Like, look at this. If you watch the video, I'm just kind of moving around. I'm not tethered to the headset or anything like that. But we'll see how the audio quality goes, and just let me know if you like it or not, and I'll consider that. So team, with that said, if you're doing 21.2, good luck. And then I will see you next week with my results, and then going into the last week of 21.3. Take care of yourselves. Peace.